The IVF ban was predicted in Federalist paper number 10 by James Madison. Federalist 10 was written in 1787, so there was no way that he knew about in vitro fertilization, just like he didn't know about mental health care access and machine guns. But he did write about conservative maximalism, or liberal maximalism, or what he calls the danger of domestic faction. Go on this journey with me. I like to project that I read a lot. That's because I do, but I hadn't actually read Federalist paper number 10 before the IVF ruling. How did I get from there to there? Well, first we have to know what is the Alabama IVF ruling and how did Jamie Madison see it coming? My graduate degree is not in political philosophy, but in something called bioethics. It's a kind of philosophy specifically dedicated to answering ethical questions in the real world, specifically ethical questions around biology and medical technology. So, put me in, coach. The state Supreme Court declared that embryos produced during IVF are legally classified as persons. You probably already know this, but just so that we're on the same page, in vitro fertilization, IVF, means the sperm and the egg are combined outside the body. In vitro literally means like inside glass in Latin. I want to get to Madison, so I don't want to go too far into the details, but it is important to note that saying it this way drastically oversimplifies the process, because in order for there to be a successful implantation, there also has to be a successful retrieval. Those things are not guaranteed to work. Since no individual step in this process is guaranteed to work, doctors retrieve more than one egg at a time. And you can see, I don't know, I've seen different clinics give different numbers, but the more eggs that are retrieved, the higher a likelihood that an actual child will end up being born, nominally the thing that the pro-life community says that it cares about. Ooh, but I did a controversial thing with that sentence. Does the pro-life party care, the conservatives care about healthy people being alive, or do they care about stopping people from taking what they consider to be human lives? You already know all the talking points. We're not going to do the abortion debate in 3 or 4 minutes on a TikTok. Let's hear what James Madison has to say in Federalist paper 10. The important word here is faction. This is the word in the title, the title being The Union as a Safeguard Against Domestic Faction and Incidentally Insurrection, but we're going to leave that for other videos. Let's read this paragraph. I will translate it because, good gracious, it is a challenging paragraph to read. By a faction, I understand a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or a minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or of interest, adverse to the rights of other citizens or to the permanent and aggregate interests of the community. Gracious. I understand this to mean a group of people who are filled with passion, which could mean rage or moral passion or a lot of different things, who are united together, small group or big group, to work against the rights of a community. In our contemporary example, a faction is these people who are so far in the pro-life camp that they're willing to do things that actually stop lives from happening. Here is a quote from Mike Pence himself. I fully support fertility treatments and I think they deserve the protection of the law. They gave us great comfort. Mike Pence has used fertility treatments. He is like the Michael Phelps of conservatism. The majority of the country is pro-choice. It is only a small group of people that are using power, wielding power to take away rights from other people. This fringe group that is taking rights away from other people was defined by the founding father himself, author of the Constitution, James Madison, 1787, when he talked about faction. Okay, but internet guy, you said that you hadn't read Federalist paper 10 before the IVF ruling. What brought you from the IVF ruling to this paper? These 3 quotes and a specific philosophy thing that I'm just gonna speed through, and then if it was too hard to understand, just watch the video again, and I think you'll get it, or ask me questions in comments and we'll figure it out together. This might be a little dramatic, but these 3 quotes, when you understand them, form the foundation of what democracy is about. And it isn't really that dramatic because this is, remember, the same person who wrote the Constitution. The inference to which we are brought is that the causes of faction cannot be removed. Number 2, the latent causes of faction are thus sown into the nature of man. Number 3, as long as the reason of man continues fallible and he is at liberty to exercise it, different opinions will be formed. That was a lot of words, but it's really only 3 things. The context, remember, is that a faction is our rage, our moral outrage, our human desire to dominate other people sometimes and take their rights away for the sake of our own self-interest. The first thing that was said, faction is, we're gonna go to single words now, is permanent. The causes of faction cannot be removed. Why? Because it is human nature. And the third one, and this is where it's gonna get. Okay, I feel as though I've made a mistake in trying to fit all of this into a 10-minute vertical video. I might need to make a longer version on the longer version website. Let's just go through what I can fit in before the video ends, and we'll just go before the bell rings. Okay, these concepts together form the foundation of what is called democratic pluralism. This is why I was reading the Federalist paper in the first place. I, as a philosophy student, understand Isaiah Berlin's concept of value pluralism, and in seeing the IVF stuff, I wanted to look back for a source to see who had pluralism first. Who was he the one who got it? And many sources pointed to Federalist number 10 as the origin of the concept of pluralism itself. Even though the word pluralism isn't used anywhere in these documents, pluralism is the name for the concept that society can only exist without oppression when different kinds of people with different kinds of belief systems can coexist non-violently. One example of this is the separation of church and state. Suppose the question on hand is Islam correct, or is Christianity correct, or is Judaism correct? If the government is weighing in on that, that is tyranny, and that tyranny violates a pluralist society. But since Madison was smart enough to help write the Constitution, he foresaw a problem of a democracy. If you try to prevent a tyrannical government by giving the power to people, one of the things that can happen is that groups of people can come together to dominate other groups. As he says, the majority, having such coexistent passions and interests, must be, if majority forms a faction, they must, by their number and local situations, be rendered unable to concert or carry into effect schemes of oppression. I know it barely sounds like they're speaking English, but part of what he's saying is that democracy cannot function unless there are mechanisms that exist to prevent the tyranny of the majority. Pure democracy doesn't work. Pure democracy, he says, has no cure for the mischief of faction, for that human nature, permanent broken human nature element of our ability to dominate each other. As he says later, such democracies have been spectacles of turbulence and contention. So what, Mr. James, is the solution? He says that the answer is a republic. We have to delegate authority to the government, and we have to get the numbers right so that we prevent the minority, the majority. So the whole thing, it's so unsatisfying. Here's the final freaking thing. Even in a republic, even in Jefferson's dream scenario, men of factious tempers may by intrigue or by corruption gain power and then betray the interests of the people. A republic can't stop an insurrection. The Supreme Court, if you missed the news, refused to take Donald Trump off the ballot, despite the fact that he participated in an insurrection. The same Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, even though it's not democratically a popular thing. Alabama's state Supreme Court made IVF illegal, even though most Republicans don't even want to do that. Faction is rampant. The things are breaking apart. I am legitimately only halfway through my notes. I have plenty of other things to say, including some hopeful things. The conclusion is that Madison's work is unfinished. We have to continue building democracy because these people were not gods. They were like 36-year-old dudes, a lot of them a lot younger than that, with weird wigs enslaving people and writing down their theories about how we ought to run the world. What they did isn't working. We have to... For the sake of wrapping this up and tying it with a bow, let's go back to our in vitro fertilization thing. Every decision that we make might have a chance of creating a viable democracy, but we don't know which ones are gonna work. So we should just try a lot of things and hopefully some of them will grow. Oh, what the fuck? I have so many more things. There was a whole pluralism thing, and I was going to talk about epistemic derivations of pluralism, and it was going to be great. And I ran out of time. Okay, I got to make a longer video on YouTube, or just another. Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for encouraging on the previous video. Bye.